of us in the room have ever used homeopathic remedies? Great. Great. How have they been for you? Positive experience? Positive experience? Confusing at all? Is homeopathy confusing to people? Have you ever tried a remedy and it didn't work? That you thought it was supposed to work? Yeah. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So my name is Lise Battaglia, and I am a Bach flower practitioner for about 30 years, and I'm a homeopath for about 15. And I'm hoping today to talk about the ways that homeopathy is essentially an immune system remedy.
Excuse me.
Yes, I can get it.
Which one is it?
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me before we go ahead and talk about.
Lisa, I'm sorry, 1 second.
Yes.
We're ahead of schedule because we forgot to allow for questions, which we're going to do right after she finishes talking. We're going to have the speakers be available. I really apologize.
All right. So we did have a little bit of okay. Whew, good. Hey, we have extra time. How great is that? You're probably going to hear a lot about the microbiome this weekend. And you've probably already heard a lot about the relationship between the gut and all of the cells that make up our biological host that we live within. Is microbiome something familiar to people? So recent studies, and it's a number that's bandied about, 70%, 80%, there's a tremendous amount of our immune system that is dependent upon the health of our guts. So what was interesting in the research that I came across was that homeopathy has been proven in clinical studies throughout the world to heal the problems that are gut-related and thereby improves the overall health of the gut, and then we get to start from ground zero and build health and eliminate tendencies and susceptibilities towards cancer. And I thought that would be a nice information to share. You know, coming off of the lovely two speakers before, the three speakers, the experiences we had before we're going into this kind of intellectual stuff, I want to stay within that energy and just acknowledge that homeopathy is essentially a form of medicine that catalyzes your self-healing. It's not a pill you take for a problem. With very few exceptions, the best form of homeopathic care, which might explain why some people have various success with it, is that it has to be personalized and customized to your experience. So how many of us are under the impression that homeopathy is this huge umbrella that covers naturopathic medicine and herbal medicine and things like that? Okay. We're going to go a little more into detail about homeopathy as a medicine that is over 250 years old, that is its own form of medicine. I just want to clarify that to start because it can feel kind of overwhelming if we're just saying, well, I'm taking ashwagandha for my liver and it's an herbal medicine, but it's homeopathic, because actually it's not. And I'll just, just a brief summary. Some of us may already know this, but I want everybody to be on the same page. Homeopathy means same suffering. Homeopathy, same suffering from the Greek, which essentially means a substance in nature or our experience that can cause an injury has the energetic capacity, once diluted, to catalyze self-healing. I'll give you an example. If anybody's ever had shingles, we know how that feels. And has anybody ever had poison ivy? There's a similarity between both experiences. And interestingly enough, Rus tox, the Latin name for poison ivy, is used as a remedy that is often used for shingles. So that's just kind of how we think homeopathically. And that will come in useful as we talk about some of the discoveries that came up. So who I am is not that important, but everybody likes to know who's talking to them. I'm a homeopath. I'm also, before I became a full-time homeopath, I was a food for healing chef. And I was taking wheat and gluten and dairy and toxins and dyes out of people's foods, unbeknownst to them, because those were my recipes. My recipes were organic, they were natural products, respecting people's inflammation response. And this is back in the 80s and 90s. In 1996 or thereabouts, it got more difficult. People would order food that I filled their refrigerator with, and they couldn't eat it because their symptoms would change. Anybody have this experience? One day you're doing fine, and something that's supposed to be good for you, all of a sudden your body can't tolerate, you're getting bloated in the belly. These are all microbiome symptoms. Sometimes it's candida, it's an overgrowth. Sometimes very healthy food causes a reaction because the pathogenic bacteria is dying off. And this is why it can be so confounding and frustrating to get healthy. So we're going to try to sort through some of this and how homeopathy seems to be supporting this behavior. One of the things that I do is I do a lot of coaching for people who want to improve their microbiome, so it's not such a torturous experience, and you're not just buying probiotics that cost tons of money, and then you're stuck with hundreds of dollars worth of vitamins you can't take because they made you feel worse. So, I do a lot of that, but today's talk is really about how the research is proving that homeopathy is essentially an immunological treatment. Okay, Stephanie Seneff. This goes back to This goes back to my introduction as a food for healing chef. Stephanie Seneff, who is a very well-respected double PhD MIT researcher and professor, has been doing the most groundbreaking research on glyphosate. This is Roundup. And what Roundup does to the microbiome. Research has shown, big pharma research has shown that glyphosate does not affect the human body in a negative way. However, it interferes with the detoxification pathways within the microbiome. Think about it. If there's 100 trillion cells or organisms that are microbiome, and we are 30 trillion cells, whose job's more important to us? What our 30 trillion cells are doing or our 100 trillion cells? So the fact that we live within a bacterial environment, if that's not going to function, a lot of things are going to go bad. And this is one of the reasons why the microbiome and the gut is so essential to keep in mind as a primary focus for our immune health. In her research, she discovered that the illnesses that come about from a disrupted microbiome are things like pituitary, thyroid, thymus, mammary glands, testes, kidneys, pancreas, liver, and lung problems, as well as other things called gut dysbiosis, Crohn's disease, all kinds of diverticulitis, all the things that have an itis after it that are gut-related, all of these are getting worse in the presence of a non-functioning microbiome. So, and it goes back to the idea that if we figure out how to heal the microbiome and the illnesses that are related to microbiome imbalance in our gut, we're going to have a much better chance in tackling the problem that seems to be very difficult to handle. So the principle is a good gut equals a good immune system, and these gut dysbiosis illnesses increase susceptibility to cancer diagnoses. If we heal the gut dysbiosis, we heal the susceptibility to malignancy. I've already said this. So the microbiome makes up nearly 70%. And I just want to say, the slides are available to everyone who wants them. I have some references on these slides that get kind of tiny because I wanted to keep it all on one page. But I'm happy to share the slides for future research and for any of the things that you might find valuable. Just I have a table in the wellness room, so please visit me. I'd be happy to share with you what I have. There's two kinds of homeopathy. The kind of homeopathy where you go to the drugstore or Publix and you pick up a vial of arnica because you overdid your workout, or you feel a little bruised and bumped, you had some dental work. That's kind of practical homeopathy. It's great to be able to grab something that you would almost in the same way you'd grab an aspirin, but it's not the whole story. And going back to the idea that it has to be personalized to be really effective. So I encourage people not to give up if a remedy didn't work. Seek out a homeopath. There are more and more of us. This is just a summary of the research that's demonstrating that homeopathy is effective in gut dysbiosis. A recent Cochrane review looking at the pooled data from 2 studies using a simplified form of homeopathy, which is more like the allopathic model, take this remedy for that problem, is still finding that they have a benefit beyond placebo. All of the research that's being done around the world is proving that constitutional personalized homeopathy is still the most effective, but gosh, if it's still better than a placebo, it's not a bad place to start. And an outpatient survey performed in Switzerland determined that homeopathy was one of the most frequently used alternative modalities in patients suffering from Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, with more than a 67% experiencing improvement with long-term treatment. I'm at a cancer conference, a wellness conference, an immunological conference, but the principle here is that these illnesses seem to predispose people to developing cancer down the line. So as homeopathy can help eliminate that susceptibility, I think it's worthwhile talking about here. Has anyone had any of these illnesses? SIBO or Crohn's disease? Ever suffer from any of that? Any of you have a gut problem before you got anyone you know that might have gotten a diagnosis? Everyone had great guts before? You did? Absolutely not. Chronic constipation. And that really speaks to the idea that if the microbiome is not supported in its detoxification pathways, we can't detoxify. So, and it relates back to the first speaker we had talking about lymph. Got to keep things moving, so they're moving out, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of people talking about that this weekend. But keeping things flowing is so key. SIBO is one of these pernicious, difficult to solve problems that homeopathy is also having some very nice results with. Again, and here we go, constipation and diarrhea. Two of the most common conditions affecting the GI tract are constipation and diarrhea. And according to a recent survey of patients suffering from constipation in the UK, only 25 were satisfied with conventional treatments, while 43 resorted to using alternative approaches, including homeopathy. And several studies and many case reports testified to the benefits of homeopathic intervention. One of the things that I make sure we do with all my clients is that we've got to open up the emunctuary. Now, an emunctuary is a very nice fancy word for exit pathway. We're working at the lymph, we're looking at the bowels, we're looking at the respiration, we're looking at the ability to perspire. Some people can't perspire. Some people with low thyroid function actually can't perspire. So, and by taking care of these things as part of treatment, it's very helpful to recognize that especially when the microbiome is being addressed, you're going to have a die-off of pathogenic bacteria that has to leave the body. And if the emunctuaries aren't open, the highway gets clogged up and it's very unpleasant. We know the seriousness of the problem. The World Health Organization, diarrhea is the second leading cause of death in children under the age of 5, and there are nearly 1.7 billion cases annually and nearly 525,000 children who die as a result. Homeopathy has been taking care of diarrhea and constipation for 250 years, effectively, without side effects. We're finding also that the research is very interesting and conclusive in terms of liver support, gallbladder, and pain management, all things that are interesting. So homeopathy has a great role to play in the immunological approach to thinking about cancer, but also to the side effects and the difficulty in pain management, even going through chemotherapy or some other treatments that we decide we're going to do because the benefits outweigh the difficulty. Homeopathy is being used extensively in Switzerland and in eastern France, specifically to reduce the side effects of chemotherapy. Neuropathy, hair falling out, things like this. And this is going back to the idea that what could hurt you can help you. There was a very interesting study that showed that the homeopathic preparation of hepatitis C. Hepatitis C is a liver illness. But taking that illness, this is what the word no-sode means. It's actually the substance of the illness diluted to the point where there's nothing left except a drop in an ocean amount of water. It will actually stimulate the liver to heal itself. Now, what does the liver do in the immune system? It's one of the biggest detoxification organs in the body. And if we don't take care of our liver, everything becomes more difficult to try to accomplish. So, and there's a word here, telomerase. Are we talking about, have we been becoming aware of telomeres in any of your research and any of your investigations? Can you explain what a telomere is? Are you interested in helping me out? Not to put you on the spot.
No, I just explained that basically when you're born you have so many telomeres in your body, and as you get older your telomeres short until you actually, and they're like the end of a shoelace pack, so when the shoelace pack unravels, they don't lose the loop. By lengthening the telomeres, you lengthen their life.
Great description. And it's exactly like that X off the chromosome, and it's almost like as we get older or they become more impaired, it's like a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox. The end result is not as good as the original. So you're literally having a mutated cell make another mutated cell, which is mutating anymore. And what is cancer but the mutation and proliferation of badly formed cells that don't have the ability to end their life when they should, right? So to increase telomere length is a really helpful thing in all treatment. And what I love about the research that's showing about the effectiveness of the liver improvement is that we can, so many forms of cancer treatment, so many forms of allopathic treatment. There's always a moment where we have to hold our breath. I'll get through this, as we were talking earlier in today's presentations, I'll get through the tough part so I can finally relax. But this is a form of treatment that allows people to get better as they get better. Does that sound like a contradiction, but does it make sense? You can actually get better as you're getting better. You don't have to suffer through the difficult part of it. And what's being used in parts of Europe especially, and we have some doctors in India who are curing cancer with homeopathic treatment. There are some doctors in other parts of the world that are doing the same. And there are many physicians and patients who are looking at it as a very integrative model. So I'm going to use the homeopathy for this. I'm going to get rid of the neuropathy in my hand with that. So it's very integrative, and the sky's the limit in how you can use it. You can use homeopathy alongside more immune suppressive treatments, and they often help in reducing side effects. There's a homeopathic preparation of Iscador. The research is not definitive, so I'm not going to purport it as a substitution for Iscador, but the research that we've seen, the homeopathic remedy called Viscum album, and again, you can come to, I'm in the room, you can come and I'll write it all down for you. Viscum album helps with the side effects of chemotherapy, without question. And there's plenty of remedies. So I also, it's just too much to put on the slides, but I have a nice, lengthy list of remedies you can use for side effects. You don't have to see a homeopath to do them, but I would urge you and encourage you that if your self-care with homeopathy is only getting you to a certain point of success, you can call me. You can call me. Okay, this is going pretty quick. The NIH definition of immunology is interesting. It's the study of a structure and function of the immune system, the complex and integrated groups of organs, tissues, and cells, and cell products such as antibodies that by differentiating self from non-self defend the body against infection or disease and neutralize potentially pathogenic cells or substances. What's interesting is immunotherapy and homeopathy, by definition, are the same. Samuel Hahnemann, in the 1750s, wrote a book called The Organon. In the publication from 1842, he says, in homeopathy, we introduce a stronger disease in dilution, which is why rust tox given to a person that has shingles, the body fights the rust tox on the level of the energy body. I know this is kind of weird, this is a little out there, and it's very different than we're used to thinking, but it speaks to the innate wisdom and knowledge of the body to know what to do if it's given the right information. And I think many nutritionists and people that are working with the biofield of food will speak to the nature that we lose photons when we get ill. And these processes, these remedies, there's several modalities that will do this, restore the light back into the body. And the measurement of homeopathic resonance is measured in light. So we're giving the body information that it needs to function better. So when the body is fighting the rust tox, the poison ivy, it eliminates the shingles in the fighting of the other. Doesn't that sound like a vaccine? Doesn't it sound like you introduce a substance into the body so that it fights that disease and then all of a sudden the other stuff falls away? This has been proven over and over again. Essentially, it's immunological. We're giving the body a substance that makes it smarter, that makes it able to better fight its obstacles and difficulties. And I'm happy to go into more length at this, but this is a medicine that's treating 500 million people a year. And in places like India, where they have a lot more people than we do, they're having remarkable results. Whoops. Not sure how to take care of it. Okay, here we go. So we discussed a little bit the law of similars, which is how we choose a remedy. The disruption of the vital force is how the body's doesn't have the vitality to take care of itself. And then we just talked about how you introduce an artificial disease so the body fights that and solves the other natural disease. I'm going to skip through some of these because I have a few more things I want to share with you. There's one area that's called the miasm, and this is important. This is the susceptibility we have to disease, which means when a homeopath or when the research shows that you have a susceptibility to a particular kind of illness, homeopathic care at the beginning of that treatment can cut short the potential for that otherwise unpleasant manifestation to occur. And we have something called a cancer miasm. We have something called a psoric miasm. And the research that's being done on using these two diseases in homeopathic potency is proving to be remarkably effective. Dr. Ramakrishnan, using the psoric miasm, gallbladder, pancreatic, and liver cancers are being improved just by using that remedy that is the substance of the susceptibility. It's very similar to genetics, but it's about the unhealed illnesses throughout the previous generations. So if you have someone that's had cancer in their life, in their family's lives, there will be a cancer susceptibility. But the trick is to let the sleeping giant stay asleep and not disrupt it. And what do we live in a world where epigenetics runs rampant? And something like glyphosate, someone could be fine, they're doing everything great, then all of a sudden the food that they're eating can't be trusted, so we don't have a microbiome that functions properly, and that wakes the sleeping giant of susceptibility. But it's when I found that the actual miasmic remedies were being very, very effective, this was a very encouraging idea because it doesn't become that complicated to treat cancer now. There are some diseases that can be very complicated to treat homeopathically, but we are seeing doctors in places like India, and these folks see 1,000 patients a day. It's unbelievable the kind of intensity of treatment that they have. So we have a few doctors, such as Dr. Banerjee, and I'm going to close with some of this and hopefully allow for a few questions. Last time I was here a few years ago, I did talk about this, and it's worth repeating. Rustox 6C and Calc-Phos 3X, very low potencies, by the way. You're never going to create an aggravation with a substance like that, have been proven at MD Anderson to stop tumor growth. And if there's anything you just wanted to do, and just say, I'm going to do some homeopathics, I don't want to get in the whole thing with seeing a homeopath, I just want to use it as an adjunct, I want to use it as a complement, this is the way to start. Studies have shown that it is effective, and it will work alongside anything else that you're doing. It selectively induces cell death in brains. It actually increases the body's ability to know when, for a cancer cell to know when to call it a day, which is one of the reasons why we have a problem with cancer, because the cells don't die a natural death. In 91 patients who had been treated exclusively with Ruta and Calc-Phos had an average survival time of 92 months, whereas 11 patients who had been treated conventionally and used homeopathy as a supplement survived for 20 months. In addition, 7% of the homeopathy-only patients had a complete cure, 60% were improved, 22% were stable with the cancer, neither improving nor worsening, and 11% saw their cancer worsen or die. This is from the Battaglia Homeopathic Research Foundation, who did the study with MD Anderson about with Rustox and Calc-Phos 3X. And I do have a bunch of this at the wellness room if you're interested. We're finding that homeopathy is effective in nausea, insomnia, depression, anxiety, asthenia, incontinence, and hot flashes. Additionally, homeopathic remedies are being used prophylactically at the beginning of chemotherapy in order to minimize the effect of the negative effects of the chemo and radiation. What this speaks to is if we immunologically support the body to function well, the side effects will be less noticeable. And zinc metallicum is a remedy. It's a zinc. It's from zinc. So this is a nutritional item that is helping with, it's one of the top remedies for neuropathy, tingling in the hands and feet, as well as hair falling out after chemotherapy. I have at least 5 people on it right now, and their doctors are all saying that they're doing better than they expected them to. And there's a research that shows that treatment with zinc metallicum in patients with liver cirrhosis was improved. So this goes back to the idea that if we support the liver in whatever form, I'm going to say in whatever form, but in this case specifically homeopathically, you are going to have much better results. For people who want to get started, you can get a home kit, you can get a book. The National Center for Homeopathy is a great place to look for information. They have great videotapes. There's a woman named Donna Powers of Homeopathy who will give who gives great classes on just fighting regular diseases. And this is an important part. One of the things that happens when we're under chemotherapy care is your immune system is being turned on and turned off so that the medicines can work. And what are you stuck doing if there's a flu that comes by? Often people are being suggested to take massive antibiotics. And it's sort of contrary to the whole notion of immune support. So think about homeopathy as an excellent companion, that if you're facing a flu or you're under care, your immune system has been suppressed by whatever treatment you've been getting, homeopathy is a great form of medicine that doesn't have the same compromise to your microbiome. If you're not taking antibiotics, I mean, I'm always worried when I say this because I'm so grateful for it. But since 1988, I have not had an antibiotic. And I'm afraid, I keep worrying, you're worried about this. I'm afraid that someone's going to come in the middle of the night and give me a shot. just to say, too bad, Lise. Too bad, Battaglia. You're going to have to take antibiotics like the rest of us. But the truth is, the reason I was able to avoid that was because there was always something that was there to help me homeopathically. And I did not live a sheltered life. There's plenty of things I was exposed to. So it can be done taking care of the immune system, taking care of the body's vitality, not suppressing illness. One of the problems with the gut microbiome and the illnesses related to gut dysbiosis is the medication and the treatment of those problems that pushes the disease deeper into the body. A perfect example of that, which is a cancer miasm symptom, is skin problems that are treated with steroids. All of a sudden it goes into the body, the child or the person gets asthma or a respiratory ailment. This is the wrong direction of cure. Homeopathy has identified over the generations. You heal from the top down and the inside out, which is why, it's time for me to go, which is why if we get sick on the outside of the body, it's a better place than on the inside. So, oops, I actually got it all in. So folks, thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Yes.
Lisa, please, you have to use microphone.
They have to use the microphone.
Yeah,
Oh,
otherwise it won't be on the tape.
great. Would you mind going over to the microphone? Or do I pass it to them?
I'm here.
Oh, it's right there. Okay.
So, hi. So thank you for your talk. I'm always interested in the gut and the microbiome because that's been an issue for me, as you know. You talked about telomeres and telomerase. My layperson's understanding or thought on it, because I was taking a telomere product, that the products don't know what's a cancer cell and what's not a cancer cell. So here I am taking supplements to quiet and kill cancer cells, and why would I be wanting to take a telomere that might keep that cancer cell alive? So that's my question.
Great question. And it really speaks to the idea that we are afraid of our body's intelligence. We're afraid that they're not intelligent. The thing about homeopathy, and I can't speak about nutritional supplements, but the thing about homeopathy, it works with the vital force. So what's best for you, the vital force will manifest. And in the research, it is showing that apoptosis is increased with the Ruta 6C. So natural cellular death, so the suicide signal, is corrected with the Ruta 6C. And the same way that, and this is a misconception about homeopathy, the same way if you have a stroke, it could be a bleed or it could be a clot. The one remedy, arnica, will have a regulatory effect on the blood flow. So you don't need to pick the right remedy for a clot versus a bleed out. The same way you don't need to pick the right remedy to identify the cancer cell or the non-cancer cell for the telomere. Part and parcel with the telomere correction is the body's, the cancer cell's correction of their suicide signal. They will kill themselves off in the presence of Ruta.
In the present, even with or without a telomere product?
Correct. That the 6C was found to be specifically effective in increasing telomere length and correcting apoptosis, which is the suicide signal for a cancer cell.
I'm not sure.
Did that not make sense? The problem that we have with what cell are we feeding to make smarter is we don't want to make the cells that are hurting us smarter. This makes the cell smarter, and a smart cancer cell knows when to call it a day. The problem, the proliferation of the mutation, this is my understanding, I'm not a doctor and I'm not an oncologist, but the overgrowth of a cell that causes a tumor is what we're trying to stop when we try to take care of cancer, right? We're trying to make our body stop creating tumors. So when you correct the messaging between the telomere and the cell, it will call it a day naturally. It will die off the way it's supposed to in a so-called healthy person. Is that closer? Okay, yes, thank you.
Just a clarification
Sure.
question. So you said rust tox and calc phos, but then on the slide it said Ruta.
I apologize.
So which is it?
It's Ruta. I apologize. I used the rust tox as an example for the shingles analogy. It is Ruta. Thank you for that correction. It's Ruta 6C and calc phos 3X.
3X.
I apologize, and thank you for correcting me on that. Anybody else?